You ever get that feeling, that kind of deep down itch for adventure? Like there's a whole world out there just waiting to be explored, right?
Oh, absolutely. That desire to break free from the everyday routine, to experience something truly new and exciting. It's a pretty universal human urge, I'd say.
Totally. And that's exactly what Romina and Stefan, who were living in Essen, Germany, were feeling. Their story, and we're going to really dig into it today, is all about that. It's about answering that call for adventure.
And what's so cool is we have their firsthand account of this journey right from the start. Their writings and their YouTube videos give us, and of course you listening, a direct window into their experiences, their thoughts, even their doubts as they set off on this incredible bike trip.
So, like many of us, they were stuck in that whole apartment hunting grind in Essen, trying to find a place, you know the drill, and then bam, the pandemic hits and it throws everything up in the air.
Talk about a curveball, right? They had this big plan to head to Australia, to work and travel down under, and suddenly that dream just evaporated.
Poof, gone. It's like, what do you do when something you've been looking forward to just vanishes?
Well, in their case, they had this wonderfully spontaneous reaction. They thought, why not go by bike? Like, all the way to Australia.
Why not, right? It seems kind of crazy at first, but that's often how the best adventures start.
Totally. And that simple question, why not by bike? It completely changed their perspective. It sparked this incredible journey that we're about to unpack. And this is where it gets really interesting for you. They started researching, and they discovered a whole community of people who'd done these epic bike trips, people who'd cycled across continents, even around the world.
It's like finding out you're not alone, that your crazy dream is actually something that people do. It must have been incredibly encouraging for them.
Absolutely. It transforms the whole thing from a far-off dream into something tangible, something achievable.
So fast forward to October 2020. They're in a bike shop, picking up 2 shiny new trekking bikes. These are the workhorses of the cycling world, built for long distances and rough terrain. And their seller starts filling up with gear. Panniers, those bags that attach to the sides of the bikes. A tent, a cooking setup, all the essentials for life on the road.
And it's not like they just hopped on these loaded bikes and took off, right?
Yeah.
They actually had a really sensible approach to training. They started with local rides, 50 kilometers, gradually building up to 100K. They were basically rediscovering their own region, the Ruhr area, in the process.
And can you imagine that emotional whirlwind? Saying goodbye to their family and friends, knowing they were heading off on this uncertain adventure with no real end date.
It must have been a mix of excitement, nerves, probably a bit of sadness too. That's a big leap of faith.
And there's this funny anecdote from their early days on the road. They had packed so much stuff, just in case they needed it, that their bikes were ridiculously overloaded. They could barely steer. They had to go back and seriously rethink their packing strategy. It's a classic rookie mistake.
It's a good reminder for anyone, really. Packing light is essential for bike travel. Every extra kilogram adds to the challenge.
Then came a big shift for them. It was around the time they took the ferry to Sweden. That feeling of being on a trip started to fade, and it dawned on them. This wasn't just a holiday, it was a new way of life. A life lived on 2 wheels, moving at a slower pace, more connected to the world around them.
That transition from trip to new life, that's a really significant moment. It represents a deeper commitment, a change in mindset.
And as they embraced this new life, nature became a constant companion. Right from the start, they were eager to experience the outdoors, to camp under the stars.
And those early attempts at camping, well, let's just say they had a steep learning curve.
Oh, yeah. They talk about spending 2 hours trying to set up their tent in their garden, in freezing temperatures, no less. Talk about dedication.
It shows they were willing to learn, to make mistakes, and figure things out. That's a key ingredient for any successful adventure.
They eventually hit the road and started wild camping in Germany, and they were blown away by the hospitality they encountered. People were inviting them to camp on their property, offering them food and place to rest. It really restored their faith in humanity.
It's amazing how a shared passion, like cycling, can create those instant connections, those moments of kindness between strangers.
But then they got to Denmark, and things were a bit different. Wild camping wasn't as easy there. They had to rely on an app called Shelter to find designated spots. It's a good reminder that rules and attitudes towards camping vary quite a bit from country to country.
Absolutely. Being adaptable is essential for any long-distance traveler. You have to be prepared to adjust your plans to go with the flow.
Once they crossed into Sweden, the feeling of solitude really set in. They were cycling through vast forests along long, straight roads, and their constant companions, horseflies. Swarms of them.
Those pesky horseflies are a common nuisance for cyclists, especially in certain areas.
It's funny, they even mentioned that the only time they got relief from the horseflies was when a car passed by. The rush of air would momentarily disrupt the fly's flight.
It's those little details, those everyday annoyances and triumphs that really bring the story to life, don't they?
They did find moments of peace and tranquility in Sweden, though. They talk about camping by small lakes, often with a swimming spot and even a basic toilet. It sounds idyllic.
Those little comforts can make all the difference when you're living simply close to nature.
As they approached Norway, the landscape started to change dramatically. It became more rugged, more mountainous.
And their first impressions of Norway are just breathtaking. They describe this high plateau, waterfalls cascading down cliffs, reindeer in the distance. It's like something out of a postcard.
They cycled along the Namsen River, then followed the Atlantic coastal route. And then they reached those incredible islands, Lofoten and Vesterålen. The photos and videos from that part of their journey are just stunning.
The Norwegian coastline is world-renowned for its beauty, its dramatic fjords and rugged mountains. To experience it by bike at a slower pace must have been truly unforgettable.
They made it all the way up to Tromsø, which is a popular spot for seeing the northern lights. But even though it's a tourist destination, they still found a sense of solitude, especially in the vastness of northern Lapland.
And this is something that comes up again and again in their account. The feeling of being immersed in nature, of being dwarfed by its grandeur.
Then they crossed into Finland, and the landscape shifted again. Endless forests, countless lakes, and much less traffic on the roads, especially as they headed from Nordkapp toward Inarjavalo.
That sense of remoteness, of being truly off the beaten track, must have been quite powerful.
And they actually mentioned that they found cycling through Finnish Lapland to be much, much cooler than Norway, which, after those swarms of horseflies, must have been a welcome relief. But here's the thing. Finland wasn't all flat, as you might expect. They encountered some surprisingly hilly terrain, even reaching elevations of 52 meters and 300 meters.
It just goes to show you can't always rely on stereotypes. Every place has its surprises.
And speaking of surprises, they had an interesting experience with the Finnish skyddshütte. These are basic shelters, often found in forests or national parks, that hikers and cyclists can use for free.
They're a great resource for anyone exploring the outdoors.
So they found one marked on their map, hiked a kilometer with their bikes to reach it, and guess what? It had burnt down. Talk about disappointment.
It's a reminder that things don't always go according to plan, especially when you're traveling in remote areas.
They did manage to find another skyddshütte later on, thankfully, complete with an outhouse and firewood. Those little things can make such a difference when you're living simply. And they were really impressed with how easy it was to find water in Finland. There were lakes everywhere.
That abundance of fresh water is a real blessing for cyclists, especially in warmer weather.
And of course, there were more wildlife encounters. They tried to help a small snake cross the road, sadly, without success, and they had more reindeer sightings. These moments of connection with nature are so precious.
They add a whole other dimension to the travel experience. It's not just about the kilometers covered or the places you see. It's about those unexpected encounters, those moments of wonder.
Fast forward a bit, and they're cycling through the beautiful countryside of eastern Poland. And then as they enter Austria, they're greeted by the stunning autumn colors of the wine terraces and the imposing castle ruins in the Wachau region.
The Wachau Valley is a truly special place, famous for its vineyards and its picturesque scenery. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, for good reason.
But it's not just the landscapes that make their journey so compelling, it's also the human connections they make along the way. In Sundsvall, Sweden, they randomly met 3 other German-speaking cyclists, and they ended up forming a lasting friendship.
Those chance encounters with fellow travelers can be so enriching. They can turn a solo journey into a shared experience, full of camaraderie and support.
And remarkably, they seemed to navigate through borders during the corona times without too much hassle. Given the global situation at that time, it's quite surprising.
It speaks to their flexibility, their willingness to adapt to changing circumstances.
We talked about the kindness of strangers offering camping spots in Germany, but that theme continues throughout their journey. They noticed the different pace and atmosphere of Tallinn, Estonia, a contrast to the more Nordic countries they'd been through.
Experiencing those cultural differences is a big part of the joy of travel. It broadens your horizons, challenges your assumptions.
In Estonia, they used an app to find shelters and picnic spots, really embracing the forests. They even picked apples and other fruits right by the roadside, and they spent a night in a birdwatching tower. That's pretty adventurous.
It shows their resourcefulness, their ability to make the most of whatever comes their way.
Latvia presented some challenges, though. They had trouble finding a place to sleep one night, and they had to navigate a damaged bridge by carrying their bikes over pallets and planks.
Talk about ingenuity. Those unexpected obstacles are all part of the adventure.
But even in Latvia, they experienced kindness. They were allowed to camp on a farm right next to a wheat field, and they found Lithuania to be particularly welcoming, with well-tended houses and gardens that reflected a strong sense of community.
It's heartwarming to hear about those acts of generosity, those moments where people go out of their way to help strangers.
They visited the Hill of Crosses in Lithuania, a powerful and moving sight. And after breaking 2 spokes on their bikes, they ended up at a campsite where people were incredibly kind, offering them noodles and support.
Those small gestures of kindness can mean the world when you're far from home and facing a setback.
They even wild camped near a railway line in Lithuania. Not the most peaceful spot, but it shows their adaptability. Then, in Poland, they had a rather unsettling experience with numerous dead snakes on the roads, which they found quite disturbing. It made them reflect on the impact of humans on the natural world.
It's a sobering reminder that our actions have consequences for the environment.
They also had to contend with an overwhelming number of spiders and their webs as they cycled through Poland. Apparently, their bikes were covered in webs every few minutes. But even amidst the creepy crawlies, they encountered a helpful supermarket worker who offered assistance.
Even in those moments of discomfort, human kindness can shine through.
They were even allowed to sleep in a delivery van on an apple plantation in Poland, and a young mother invited them to sleep in her garden, offering a shower and refreshments. The generosity they encountered was truly remarkable.
It really restores your faith in humanity, doesn't it?
They did notice the varying water quality in different countries. The iron-rich water in Poland, for example, presented a bit of a challenge. Then, in the Czech Republic, they found it relatively easy to find camping spots along the Eurovelo routes, which are a network of long-distance cycling paths that crisscross Europe.
The Eurovelo routes are a fantastic resource for cyclists, offering well-maintained paths and beautiful scenery.
They even came across a self-service beer tap on a Czech bike path. That's a pretty cool perk. People in the Czech Republic were very welcoming, allowing them to camp on a field.
It sounds like the Czech Republic is a very bike-friendly country.
They had an interesting encounter with an apiary in the Czech Republic, complete with public announcements over loudspeakers, and they were even allowed to park their bikes at a golf resort. As they reached Austria, they helped a praying mantis cross the road, a final little act of kindness towards nature. They found the numerous cycling route signs in Austria a bit confusing, but they eventually made their way. Finding accommodation in Vienna proved difficult, but they were fortunate enough to be hosted by a guy named Roland in a wine-growing region. They even got to see a Wohnhöhle, which is a cave dwelling. They observed mating grasshoppers, and of course they had a wine cellar experience. The hospitality extended into Oberbayern, Germany, which was part of their planned route. Their journey through Europe is filled with these wonderful moments of connection with both nature and with people.
And that journey from Germany to Austria is just the first chapter in their story. They're ultimately heading for Australia, remember?
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the first leg of Romina and Stefan's incredible journey, just remember that there's so much more to come. In future episodes, we'll be following them as they face new challenges, encounter new landscapes, and meet new people.
We'll see how they tackle the Alps, how they navigate the British Isles, and eventually how they make their way across vast continents to reach their final destination.
We'll learn about the detours they had to take, the setbacks they faced, and the triumphs they celebrated.
Their story is a testament to the power of saying yes to adventure, of embracing the unknown, and of trusting in the kindness of strangers.
So will Romina and Stefan make it all the way to Australia by bike? What other incredible experiences await them on the road? Join us next time as we continue to follow their extraordinary journey.
And in the meantime, why not ask yourself that simple question? What adventure might be waiting for me if I were willing to step outside my comfort zone and say, why not?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We're already looking forward to our next exploration.